what's important to understand about our rookies, though, and you all see them, you all know them, they're not only really good players, they're really good people. And they will be the cornerstone with which we'll build and grow and develop this winning team. But I think it would be short-sighted to not just look at free agency, not just look at the draft.
If you thought the Cleveland Browns were done shocking people this year, think again, because what just came out of owner Jimmy Haslam's mouth may have quietly changed the entire future of Shedeur Sanders, and almost nobody is talking about it the right way. See, while the internet was busy screaming about firings, rumors, and panic headlines, something far more dangerous happened behind the scenes. A few carefully chosen words, a pause, a smile, and suddenly, fans were left asking the same question over and over again. Did the Browns just make their final call without actually saying it? The internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either. Blogs started spiraling. Fans started connecting dots that weren't supposed to be connected, and insiders started whispering things they probably shouldn't have been saying out loud. Because let me ask you this. If you were in that position, same pressure, same betrayal, same franchise on the line, what would you do? Protect the system or protect the future? People online were already saying it. Bro said too much and they can't walk it back now. So buckle up, because once you hear what was said, and more importantly, what wasn't, everything about the situation starts to look different. Let's break it all down. And trust me, it only gets uglier from here. At first, it didn't feel like breaking news. No alarms, no flashing banners, no emergency press conference with trembling voices. Just a few carefully chosen sentences spoken calmly, almost casually by Jimmy Haslam. And that's what made it dangerous. Because when billionaires speak softly, history usually changes quietly. The Cleveland Browns have lived in chaos for decades. Coaches in and out, quarterbacks rotating faster than excuses, hope rising every few seasons just long enough to break hearts all over Ohio. And Browns fans? They've learned to read between the lines better than anyone. They know when optimism is fake.
And then I'm giving you guys my thoughts at the end of this video, so let's keep this train rolling.
We saw a lot of progress with Shedeur this year. I think that's both mentally and physically when he played the position. He's still very much a work in progress, like any rookie quarterbacks are. But I think we saw some really good things in terms of his play making, his accuracy, his ability to stay on his feet. And I think that also gave him.
They know when press conferences are scripted, and they know when something doesn't sit right. This time, it didn't sit right at all. See, the surface story was simple. A season gone wrong. A coaching staff under fire. A general manager under scrutiny. But under that surface, something else was brewing. Something uncomfortable. Something the mainstream coverage completely missed. Because while everyone was distracted by rumors, firings, and speculative hot takes, Jimmy Haslam was doing something far more revealing. He was talking about rookies. Not playbooks. Not schemes. Not excuses, people. And in the NFL, when an owner starts talking about people instead of performances, you're no longer discussing football. You're discussing identity, control, future direction. Now let's rewind a bit. The Browns' rookie class walked into one of the most unstable environments in professional sports. No clear quarterback hierarchy. A locker room divided by uncertainty. A coaching staff accused, quietly but persistently, of already having its favorites picked. And right in the middle of that storm stood Shedeur Sanders, a name that carried weight before he ever took a snap. From day one, the whispers followed him. Too popular, too much attention, too much noise. Critics said the hype was bigger than the resume. Supporters said the resume never got a fair chance to speak. And somewhere between those two narratives, Shedeur was forced to sit, wait, and watch as decisions were made around him, not with him. And here's where things started to feel off. Because when Shedeur did play, limited reps, limited preparation, limited support, something strange happened. The team looked different. Not perfect, not polished, but alive. The offense moved. The confidence shifted. The crowd leaned forward instead of bracing for impact. Yet somehow, that energy never translated into trust from the coaching staff. Fans noticed.
Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski was the dead weight of this football team. He was the reason why Shedeur Sanders was struggling in the first place because he wasn't giving him first team reps. He wasn't giving him a true four-way QB battle. It was just bad. And so in 2026, I expect different. I expect more positivity.
Analysts noticed. Even former players started hinting at it. Why wasn't he getting real reps? Why was the competition never truly open? Why did it always feel like the door was only half unlocked? Those questions grew louder as the season unraveled. And then came the moment everyone thought would reset everything. The firing. When Kevin Stefanski was officially out, social media exploded. Some celebrated. Some panicked. Some immediately asked the obvious question: what does this mean for quarterback room? But again, that wasn't the most important move. The real story was who stayed. Because while the head coach took the fall, Andrew Berry remained firmly in place. No hedging. No, we'll evaluate. No uncertainty. Ownership didn't flinch. And in the NFL, that matters more than anything. When a GM survives a coaching purge, it usually means one thing. Ownership believes the talent evaluation was right and the execution was wrong. Translation? The picks weren't the problem. The system was. Berry, the man who personally selected Shedeur Sanders, stood at the podium and did something subtle but critical. He didn't overhype. He didn't promise stardom. Instead, he praised progress, development, pocket awareness, situational understanding. Those are not words GMs casually use for rookies they've lost faith in. Those are words you use when you're protecting an investment. Still, the media brush it off. Standard GM talk. Damage control. Protecting his draft class. That's what the headline said. But then Jimmy Haslam spoke, and everything changed because Haslam didn't defend schemes. He didn't argue play calling. He didn't even talk much about wins and losses. He talked about character, about culture, about rookies being really good people, about them being the cornerstone of what comes next. Cornerstone. That word hit different. Owners don't use that language lightly, not accidentally, not emotionally. When an owner says cornerstone, he's talking about assets you build around, not experiment with. Players you commit to, not cycle through. Faces of a future you're willing to defend publicly. And here's the part nobody wanted to say out loud. When you talk about building a winning NFL team, there's only one true cornerstone position. Everything else is secondary. Every system bends around it. Every roster move depends on it. Quarterback. And in that rookie class, there was only one quarterback. Suddenly, Haslam's comments didn't sound generic anymore. They sounded strategic, almost deliberate, especially when you factor in what he didn't say. No talk of drafting another quarterback early. No mention of starting over. No distancing language. No subtle blame toward the rookie class. Instead, there was protection, praise, and a noticeable shift in responsibility away from the players and toward the structure around them. That's when fans started connecting dots. Because if ownership truly believed the rookie quarterback was a mistake, this was the perfect moment to create distance. New coach, clean slate, fresh excuses. But instead, Haslam doubled down on the people his GM brought in. And then there was the business angle. The part nobody in football media likes to admit matters, but absolutely does. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another rookie. He brought attention, ratings, jerseys, global conversation, a fan base that extended far beyond Cleveland. For a franchise that has struggled to stay relevant nationally, that kind of presence isn't distraction, it's leverage. Owners understand that better than anyone. So when Haslam spoke about looking beyond just the draft, beyond just free agency, beyond traditional thinking, some heard football talk. Others heard business strategy, brand value, long-term positioning. And when you combine football logic with business logic, the picture starts to sharpen. This wasn't about one season. This wasn't about one coach. This wasn't even about one controversy. This was about control over the future. And as the dust settled from the firing, as fans replayed those comments over and over, one unsettling idea began to take shape. Maybe the final call had already been made, just not announced. Because sometimes in the NFL, The loudest decisions are the ones made without headlines. And what came next, even his enemies didn't expect. Because once that idea settled in, that the decision might already be made, everything that followed started to look less like coincidence and more like choreography. That's when the leaks started. Not official ones. Not the kind that come with names and logos. The quiet kind. Screenshots floating around group chats. Anonymous quotes popping up in blog posts that always start with, according to someone close to the situation. The kind of information that feels too specific to be random, but too deniable to confirm. One message that circulated claimed the Browns front office had been internally frustrated with how the quarterback room was handled early in the season. Another suggested that multiple veterans had privately questioned why the rookie wasn't being given meaningful reps when the season was already slipping away. Nothing provable, nothing printable by major outlets, but enough to make fans start re-watching games with a different lens. And when you do that, patterns emerge. You start noticing the body language, the way receivers reacted when Shedeur was under center versus when he wasn't, the way the sideline felt more engaged, the way the offense, flawed as it was, seemed to operate with urgency instead of hesitation. It wasn't perfect football, but it was honest football. And sometimes honesty scares systems built on control. Then came the reactions. Sports blogs lit up overnight. Some tried to downplay it. This is overreaction season. Others leaned all the way in. Headlines screamed about internal divides, about power struggles, about a franchise once again eating itself alive. And right in the middle of it all was Shedeur Sanders, not saying a word. No subtweets, no cryptic Instagram captions, no interviews throwing anyone under the bus. Silence. And in today's media landscape, silence is either guilt or discipline. Fans notice that too. One viral post summed it up perfectly. Funny how the loudest people right now aren't the ones actually under pressure. Another said, if he was really the problem, they'd be rushing to distance themselves. Instead, they're protecting him. Because protection was exactly what it looked like. Andrew Berry continued to speak carefully, but consistently. Every time the quarterback room came up, his tone stayed measured. He acknowledged flaws, but emphasized growth. He mentioned mental processing, pocket movement, poise, words that carry weight when spoken by someone whose job depends on being right. And then, almost out of nowhere, came the business rumors. Reports, again unofficial, started circulating about jersey sales spikes during the games Shedeur played, about viewership bumps, about international engagement metrics that made marketing departments very happy. One anonymous source was quoted saying, "You can't ignore what he brings off the field, not in today's league." Cue the sarcasm online. Yeah, because nothing says irrelevant like selling out jerseys while the season's on fire. Guess charisma doesn't matter unless it's someone you didn't draft. And suddenly, intangibles are a bad thing. The internet, as always, chose sides. But behind closed doors, the stakes were higher than fan debates. Because this wasn't just about whether Shedeur could play. It was about whether the Browns were finally willing to commit to a direction instead of hedging every bet. For years, Cleveland had lived in fear of being wrong. Wrong coach, wrong quarterback, wrong rebuild, and that fear led to paralysis. Safe decisions, familiar names, veteran stopgaps. Shedeur represented the opposite of safe. He was visible, polarizing, confident. He brought attention whether the franchise wanted it or not. And when attention exposes cracks, organizations tend to respond in one of two ways: shut it down or rebuild around it. Kevin Stefanski's handling of the quarterback room suddenly came under harsher scrutiny in that context. Why was the competition never truly open? Why did the messaging feel inconsistent? Why praise development privately while limiting opportunity publicly? That's when the more uncomfortable rumors surfaced. One blog hinted at philosophical clashes between coaching staff and front office. Another suggested Stefanski had lost the room weeks before the firing. Again, nothing confirmed. But when multiple narratives point in the same direction, even denial starts sounding hollow. And then there were the supposed leaked messages. Screenshots allegedly showing internal frustration with play-calling rigidity. Anonymous quotes describing meetings that went nowhere. One particularly viral fake DM claimed a staffer said, "We're evaluating talent with one hand tied behind our back." True or not, the damage was done. Because perception became reality, fans started reframing the season not as a failure of talent, but as a failure of alignment, a mismatch between vision and execution. And once that idea takes hold, it's hard to shake. Jimmy Haslam's earlier comments suddenly felt heavier. When he talked about rookies being good people, it sounded less like praise and more like contrast. A subtle line drawn between who belonged in the future and who didn't. And that's when the scandal narrative fully took shape. Not an affair, not a crime, not a leaked tape, but something arguably more dangerous in the NFL. A quiet power struggle. Owners versus coaches. Long-term assets versus short-term control. Brand versus system. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a player anymore. He was a symbol, a test case. Could Cleveland finally break its cycle? Could it trust a young quarterback and build properly instead of panicking? Or would it repeat history and chase the illusion of certainty again? The fallout was immediate. Talk shows debated whether bringing in a veteran quarterback would send the wrong message. Former players chimed in, split down the middle. Some argued competition was healthy. Others pointed out that competition only works when it's fair. One ex-NFL quarterback said on a podcast, "If you draft a guy and don't give him a real chance, that's on you, not him." The clip went viral within hours. And then, just when it felt like the conversation had peaked, another name entered the discussion, a potential free agent, a rumored trade target, a familiar veteran face whose availability sparked panic in one corner of the fan base and excitement in another. Suddenly, the narrative shifted again. Was this insurance, a smokescreen, or a challenge? Because if Cleveland truly believed in Shedeur, bringing in a veteran wouldn't be about replacement. It would be about competition on equal footing, something he'd never had. And that possibility changed everything, because competition exposes truth. And as the Browns quietly prepared for their next move, one question hovered over every rumor, every leak, every press conference. Were they about to double down on the future or betray it one last time? But just when everyone thought they understood the game being played, another detail surfaced that flipped the entire story on its head. Because that detail didn't come from a headline. It didn't come from a press conference. It came from silence. A very specific kind of silence. No rush to sign a new quarterback. No aggressive trade leaks. No anonymous front office source screaming, "We're starting over." Instead, there was patience. And in the NFL, patience is rarely accidental. As weeks passed, insiders began to notice something strange. The Browns weren't behaving like a franchise in panic mode. No desperate PR pushes. No emergency statements trying to calm fans down. No distancing language from ownership when Shedeur Sanders' name came up. If anything, the tone stayed steady, almost confident. That's when the aftermath truly set in, because behind the scenes, the ripple effects of that final call mentality were already being felt. Players started speaking differently in interviews, not openly, not directly, but you could hear it in the phrasing, in the pauses, in the way they talked about next year instead of this system. One veteran receiver was quoted saying, "We just want clarity. Whoever it is, give us clarity." On the surface, harmless, but Browns fans know better. That wasn't about confusion. That was about trust. And trust had been missing for a long time. Shedeur, meanwhile, stayed quiet. No victory laps. No subtweets. No, they doubted me speeches. Just work. Training clips. Film study. Controlled appearances. The kind of discipline you don't fake, especially when the internet is begging you to react. That restraint mattered. Because as the noise got louder, the contrast got sharper. The louder the speculation became, the calmer Shedeur looked. And in a league where quarterbacks are judged as much on temperament as talent, that didn't go unnoticed. Then came the mental toll. Sources close to the locker room described a season that drained everyone. Constant uncertainty, mixed messages, rotating plans, And yet, when players talked about Shedeur, the tone shifted. Words like composed, prepared, resilient, not superstar language, leader language. That's important. Because franchises don't just break quarterbacks physically, they break them mentally. And Cleveland has a reputation for that. A place where hope arrives loud and leaves quietly, where young players are chewed up by expectations and spit out by impatience. But this time, something was different. Ownership had seen that movie too many times. Jimmy Haslam has owned the Browns long enough to know what failure looks like. He's seen what happens when you chase fixes instead of foundations, when you prioritize comfort over conviction. And when he spoke about really good people, it wasn't just character talk, it was damage control. Because culture rot starts when organizations stop protecting the right people. And for the first time in a long time, Cleveland looked like it was protecting someone early, before the damage was irreversible. That's where redemption entered the story. Not redemption as in a guaranteed starting job. Not redemption as in a coronation, but redemption as in a fair shot. Something Shedeur never had. With the coaching staff reset, the playing field finally leveled. No inherited biases. No sunk cost veterans automatically getting the edge. No excuses hidden behind system fit. If a veteran comes in now, it won't be to block him, it'll be to push him. And if Shedeur wins that competition, and many believe he will, it won't be questioned, it won't be debated, it'll be earned. And that scares people. Because earned success can't be dismissed as hype. That's when the final twist surfaced. A longtime AFC executive, speaking anonymously, reportedly said, if Cleveland handles this right, they might finally have stability at quarterback. If they don't, it's another decade of searching. That quote made the rounds fast, because it framed the entire situation perfectly. This wasn't about one player. This wasn't about one season. This was about whether the Browns had actually learned anything. The backlash came too, of course. Critics warned about overcommitting, about being blinded by popularity, about mistaking flashes for futures. And those concerns weren't wrong. They were just incomplete, because nobody was saying Shedeur was finished developing. Not Barry, not Haslam, not even the most optimistic fans. What they were saying was simpler. Don't sabotage your own investment. Give him structure, give him reps, give him accountability and opportunity in equal measure. That's not favoritism. That's development. As the offseason loomed, the mystery deepened. No official announcements. No declarations of QB1. Just preparation, quiet confidence, and a fan base that, for once, felt like it wasn't being lied to. Because hope felt different this time. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't manufactured. It was cautious, earned, grounded. And when Jimmy Haslam spoke again weeks later, he didn't need to clarify anything. The message had already landed. The organization had drawn its line, not in public statements, but in actions. The Browns weren't running from their rookie quarterback. They were finally running with him. And that's what makes the rest of the league nervous. Because if Cleveland actually commits, if Shedeur gets a full offseason, real protection, real coaching, real belief, then all those years of dysfunction start to look like prelude instead of prophecy. So here we are, a franchise at a crossroads, a quarterback with everything to prove, an owner who's done pretending patience doesn't matter. The biggest question now isn't whether Shedeur Sanders can be the future. It's whether Cleveland will finally stop getting in its own way. Because if they do, this story doesn't end in controversy. It ends in everyone wishing they'd paid attention when the decision was made quietly, long before it was ever announced. So now the question isn't whether something happened. It's whether you were paying attention when it did. Because if you rewind everything we just broke down, the signs were there the whole time. The words, the pauses, the people who stayed, the people who didn't. Jimmy Haslam didn't have to stand at a podium and crown anyone. He didn't need a headline saying QB1. He did something far more powerful. He showed you who the organization is willing to protect. And in the NFL, protection tells you everything. So here's where it gets real. Do you think the Cleveland Browns are finally ready to commit to a future instead of panicking their way into another reset? Do you believe Shedeur Sanders deserves a real, fair competition with first-team reps and an actual offseason built around development? Or do you think Cleveland is about to repeat the same mistake it's made for decades, chasing comfort instead of conviction? Be honest. If this were your franchise, if this were your decision, would you double down on the rookie who brought hope back into the building? Or would you reach for another familiar name and call insurance? Because whatever happens next, one thing is clear. This story is far from over. The offseason is coming. Moves will be made. Names will leak. Narratives will shift. And when the next headline drops, you'll remember this moment, when the clues were already on the table. So let me know what you think. Drop your take in the comments. Argue it out. Call it early. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every quiet move, every decision they don't want you to notice, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because when this finally explodes in public, you'll want to be able to say you saw it coming.